Okay, so now that we've learned about some of the most common HTML elements, it's time to learn how to set up an HTML file. HTML requires certain elements to set up a document properly. We can let web browsers know that we are using HTML by starting our documents with the document type declaration. The declaration looks like this. Exclamation doc type HTML. This declaration is an instruction, and it must be the first line of code in your HTML document. It tells the browser what type of document to expect, along with what version of HTML is being used in the document. For now, the browser will currently assume that the HTML in doc.html is referring to HTML5 as it is the current standard. In the future, however, a new standard will override HTML5. To make sure your document is forever interpreted correctly, always include .html at the beginning of your HTML document. Lastly, HTML code is always saved in a file with an .html extension. At the creation of the very first line of code at the top of the index file. Okay. I'm busy with things. The exclamation doc type HTML declaration provides the browser with two pieces of information: the type of document and the HTML version to expect. But it doesn't actually add any HTML structure or content. To create HTML structure and content, we must add opening and closing HTML tags after declaring doc type HTML. Anything between the opening HTML and the closing HTML tags will be interpreted as HTML code. Without these tags, it's possible that browsers could incorrectly interpret your HTML code. Add the opening and closing tags. So far, you've done two things to set up the file properly. Declare the browser that your code is HTML with the definition. Add the HTML element. HTML will contain the rest of your code. We have added these elements to the brown bear page you previously created. Now let's also give the browser some information about the page itself. We can do this by adding a head element. Remember the body tag? The head element is part of this HTML metaphor. It goes above our body element. The head element contains the metadata for a web page. Metadata is information about the page that isn't displayed directly on the web page. Unlike the information inside of the body tag, the metadata in the head is information about the page itself. You'll see an example of this in the next exercise. The opening and closing head tags typically appear as the first item after your first HTML tag. What kind of metadata about the web page can the head element contain? If you navigate to Dakota County Catalog and look at the top of your browser, you'll notice that the word All Courses and Tutorials, which is the title of the web page, browser displays the title specified in the title tag. The title tag is always inside the head coding journal. If we were to open a file containing HTML code in the example above, the browser would display the word My Coding Journal in the title bar, or in the tab's title. Add brown bears as the title of your web page by using the title element. Unfortunately, you won't be able to see the title of your page in the smaller browser to the right. We'll show you what it looks like in the next exercise. Okay. Title. Okay. Next. Portfolio site. Good work. Unfortunately, the browser panel used by the Dakota County environment does not have a title bar, so the brown bear title you wrote in the previous exercise will not be displayed. Outside of the Dakota County environment, however, your title would appear as depicted in the diagram to the right. So far, we have learned about doc type declarations specify the version of HTML for the browser, the HTML tag that encloses all of your HTML code, and head tag that contains the metadata of a web page such as the title. Next, you will learn about new types of elements that go inside the body. Okay. Linking to other web pages. One of the powerful aspects of HTML and the internet is the ability to link to other web pages. You can add links to a web page by adding an anchor element and including the text to the link in between the opening and closing tags. Wait a minute, technically the link is the example above is incomplete. How exactly is the link supposed to work if there is no URL? That will lead users to an actual Wikipedia page. The anchor element in the example above is incomplete without the href attribute. This attribute stands for hyperlink reference and is used to link to a path. or or the address of where a file is located. Whether it is on your computer or another location, the path provides to the href attribute are often URLs. In the example above, the href attribute has been set to the value of the URL www.wikipedia.org. The example now shows the correct use of an anchor element. When reading technical documentation, you may come across the term hyperlink. Not to worry, this is simply the technical term for link. These terms are often used interchangeably. After the first paragraph, right above the heading that says species, add a link that says learn more. Don't add the URL just yet. Okay. Species. Right above the heading that says species. Okay. Add the following URL to the link. Okay. href is equal to learn more. Alright, learn more. Run. Okay, cool. Next. Have you ever clicked on a link and observed the resulting web page opens in a new browser window? If so, you can thank the anchor element's target attribute. The target attribute specifies how a link should open. It's possible that one or more link on your web page link to an entirely different website. In this case, you may want the user to read the linked website, but hope that they return to your web page. This is exactly when the target attribute is useful. For a link to open in a new window, the target attribute requires the value of _blank. The target attribute can be added directly to the opening tag of the anchor element, just like the href attribute. In the example above, setting the target attribute to _blank instructs the browser to open the relevant Wikipedia page in a new window. In this exercise, we've used the terminology open in a new window. It's likely that you are using a modern browser that opens up websites to new tabs, rather than new windows. Before the advent of browsers with tabs, additional browser windows had to be opened to view more websites. I'm thinking about other things. It's likely, in this exercise, we've used the terminology open a new window. It's likely that you are using a modern browser that opens up websites in a new tab, rather than new windows. Before the advent of browsers with tabs, additional browser windows had to be opened to view more websites. The target _blank attribute, when used in a modern browser, will open new websites in a new tab. In the link that reads learn more, add the target attribute and set it equal to blank. Okay. Target equals Thus far, you have learned how to link external web pages. Many sites also link to internal web pages like Home, About, and Contact. Before we learn how to link between internal pages, let's establish where our files are stored. When making a multi-page static website, web developers often store HTML files in the root directory, or a main folder where all the files for the project are stored. As the size of the project you create grows, you may use additional folders within the main project to organize your code. For the example above shows 3 different files: about.html, contact.html, and index.html in one folder. HTML files are often stored in the same folder as shown in the example above. If the browser is correctly displaying html.index.html, it also knows that the about.html and the contact.html are in the same folder. Because the files are stored in the same folder, you can link web pages together using a relative path. Contact. In this example, the A target is used with a relative path to link to the link from the current HTML file to the contact HTML file in the same folder. On the web page, contact will appear as a link. A relative path is a file name that shows the path to a local file, a file on the same website, such as ._./index.html, versus an absolute path or full path like https://.html, which is stored in a different folder. The ./in./index.html tells the browser to look for the file in the current folder. Directly below the opening body tag within HTML and the anchor tag that links to the index with a relative path, the link should say brown bear. Directly below body tag within index.html, add an anchor tag that links to index.html with a relative path. The link should say brown bear. Okay, so after body, a href is equal to within directly below the opening body tag within HTML, the anchor tag that adds H to a relative path. The link should say brown bear. Okay. So here I'm just gonna do there. Okay. To index.html. Okay. href is equal to /index .html. Under the link to index.html, add an anchor tag that links to aboutme.html using a relative path. Link should say, as there's another file in the code editor. Click on the link to make sure it works. Okay. So a href is equal to // about me.html. Okay. Hey, my name is Michael, and there's little I find more exciting than bears. I spent most of my young life traveling to the edge of the earth, taking videos of these wonderful creatures. Country bears. Michael D. Okay. Linking at will. You have probably visited websites where not all links were made up of text. Maybe the links you clicked on were images or some other forms of content. So far, we've added links that were made up of only text, like the following. A ref video. Wow. Yeah, blank. Prickly pear. Prickly pear. Okay. So now, text only links, however, would significantly decrease your flexibility as a web developer. Thankfully, HTML allows you to turn nearly any element into a link by wrapping that element within an anchor element. With this technique, it is possible to turn images into links by simply wrapping the image element within an A element. Okay. An example above, an image of a prickly pear has been turned into a link by wrapping the outside of the image element with an A element, anchor element. The index element transforms the image on the page into a link by wrapping the image element with an anchor element. Set the target attribute so that the link opens in a new window. Index HTML transforms the images on the page into a link, wrapping that into an anchor element with an anchor element. Set the target attribute so the link opens in a new window. Your image element should be nested tag inside your anchor element. Use the same URL as before. Okay, so the image. Okay, so here's the image. A href is equal to, let me just copy and paste this because make sure that I don't get it wrong. And then target is equal to underscore blank. And then here we go. A. So now we have, I think we click, what's up, brown bear pictures. Okay, so now that we've done that, anything, right? So, anchor, href equal to google.com. Target equal to underscore blank button Google button. Okay, so now I have a Google button. Voila! What? Okay. Google. HTTPS. Okay. HTTPS colon // www.google.com. Okay. Awesome. All right, cool. All right. So next. At this point, we have all the content we want on our page. Since we have so much content, it doesn't all fit on the screen. How do we make it easier for a user to jump to different portions of our page? When a user visits our site, we want them to be able to click on a link and have the page automatically scroll to the specific section. In order to link to a target on the same page, we must give the target an ID like this. Top, bottom. In this example, P element is assigned to the ID top, and the H1 element is assigned bottom. An ID can be added to most elements on a web page. The ID should be descriptive to make it easier to remember the purpose of a link. The target link is a string containing the hashtag character and the target element's ID. In the example above, the link to P ID top and H1 ID bottom are embedded in an ordered list. These links appear in the browser as numbered list of links. An ID is especially helpful for organizing content belonging to a div. Under the H1 element that says brown bear, create an unordered list with the following 3 list items. Okay, so brown bear and unordered. So OUL UL so let me just copy and paste this a couple of times. Alright. So then we do introduction, habitat, media, introduction, habitat, media. Alright. Wrap the text of each list item in the order list and an anchored element. Each anchor tag should be the corresponding div on the page. The element that contains the text introduction is like hashtag introduction. Wrap the text of each list item in the unordered list to an anchored element. Okay. Okay, each anchor tag should link to the corresponding div on the page. Okay, div, okay, so href, okay, href is equal to hashtag introduction habitat media underscore href is equal to habitat href is equal to, oh, I forgot the pound sign. Okay. That contains the introduction, linked introductions. Wrap the text of each list item. Okay, so it's an under list of anchor elements. The rest of this lesson will focus on some tools that developers use to make code easier to interpret. As the code in an HTML file grows, it becomes increasingly difficult to keep track of how many elements are related. Programmers use two tools to visualize the relationship between elements: whitespace and indentation. Both tools take advantage of the fact that position of the element in the browser is independent of the amount of whitespace or indentation in the HTML file. For example, if you want to increase the space between two paragraphs on your web page, you would not be able to accomplish this by adding space between the paragraph elements in the index.html file. The browser ignores whitespace in HTML files when it renders a web page, so it can be used as a tool to make code easier to read and follow. What makes the example below difficult to read? Okay. Body, P paragraph 1, P paragraph 2, body. You have to read the entire line to know what elements are presented. Compared to the example above to this. And this example is easier to read because each element is on its own line, while the first example requires you to read the entire line of code to identify the elements. This example makes it easier to identify the body tag in the two paragraphs. The browser renders both examples the same way. In the next exercise, you will learn how to use indentation to help visualize nested elements. Whitespace. Use whitespace to make the code more readable by putting each element in its own line. The second tool web developers use to make the structure of code easier to read is indentation. The spaces are inserted using the space and tab bars on the keyboard. The World Wide Web Consortium, or the W3C, is responsible for maintaining the style standards of HTML. At the time of writing, the W3C recommended two spaces of indentation when writing HTML code. Although your code will work without exactly two spaces, the standard is followed by the majority of professional web developers. Indentation is used to easily visualize each element. Each elements are nested within other elements. In the example above, paragraph 1 and div tags are nested inside the body tag, so they are indented two spaces. The paragraph 2 element is nested inside the div tag, so it's indented an additional two spaces. Indent the code and index to maintain W3C standards. Okay. So, okay. Okay. HTML files also allow you to add comments to your code. Comments begin with exclamation minus minus and ended with minus minus greater than. Any characters in between will be ignored by your browser. This is a comment that your browser will not display. Including comments in your code is helpful for many reasons. They help you and others understand your code if you decide to come back and review it at a much later date. They allow you to experiment with new code without having to delete old code. Favorite film section. Following is a list of your favorite films. In this example, the comment is used to denote the following text makes up a particular section of the page. In the example above, a valid HTML element a paragraph element has been commented out. This practice is useful when there is code that you want to experiment with or return to in the future. Add a comment in a indent.file. Okay. 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 This one. Exclamation mark. This is a comment. Okay. You now know all the basic elements and setup you need to structure an HTML page and add different types of content. With the help of CSS, very soon you'll be creating beautiful websites. While some tags have very specific purposes, such as images and video tags, most tags are used to describe the content that they surround, which helps us modify and style our content later. There are seemingly infinite number of tags to use, many more than we've taught. Knowing when to use each one is based on how you want to describe the content of your HTML. Descriptive, well-chosen tags are one key to high-quality web development. A full list of available HTML tags can be found in Mozilla's documentation. Okay. Cool. Let's review what you've learned in this lesson. Declaration should always be the first line of code in your HTML file. This lets the browser knows what version of HTML to expect. The HTML element will contain all the HTML code. Information about the web page, like the title, belongs within the head of the page. You can add a title to the web page by using title element inside of the head. A web page's title appears in the browser tab. Anchor tags are used to link to internal pages, external pages, or content on the same page. You can create sections on web pages. You can create sections on a web page and jump to them using anchor tags that are added and adding IDs to the elements that you wish to jump to. White spaces between HTML elements help make code easier to read while not changing how elements appear on the browser. Indentation also helps make code easier to read and makes parent-child relationships visible. Comments are written in HTML using the following syntax: exclamation mark, minus minus, comment, minus minus, greater than. Take some time to edit the workspace and create and observe how it changes. Congratulations.
Hi everyone, my name's Chelsea, a Seattle.
If you want to review how to use HTML in a project, watch the video below and follow along with the experts. Okay. Alright. Okay. Up next. Alright. Which of the following is the current HTML standard? HTML5. Which of the following elements contain a web page's metadata head? The following code is supposed to create a link to another web page, but fails to do so. Why? The element should replace with link element. A closing tag should be removed. Word code accounting should be replaced with the URL of the website. The anchor element is missing the href attribute set to the URL of the code accounting website. Okay. Which of the following would create a link to a local HTML file called aboutme.html? Alright, so href, that's not good, that's not good. Href, it's this one. What is the purpose of indentation of white space? To change the display of elements in the browser, to make sure the browser correctly interprets nested elements in HTML file, to comment out code you don't need, to make code in the HTML file more readable. Alright, next one. The content of the title tag will appear where in a modern browser. Browsers tab. The following code creates a link to another page. Which of the following will cause the page to open in a new browser window? Okay, so should include nope. Single quotation mark should be used instead of double quotation marks. Nope. Add the target attribute with a value set to blank. That one. Which of the following is the correct syntax for a comment in HTML? It's this one. Which of the following tags instructs the browser to expect a well-formed HTML document? Which of the following tags instructs the browser to expect a well-formed HTML document? All HTML code must be nested within which of the following tags? HTML. The following HTML code should only exist within which of the following tags? The head. Why should the document type declaration be included in all HTML documents? Without it, any HTML code is invalid. Without it, the web page will not be allowed on the internet. To specify the content will display in the browser. To specify the HTML standard being used in the content. without the web page, without the web page will not be allowed on the internet. To specify the content will display in the browser. Oh shit. Okay. Specify the content will display in the browser. No. Specify the HTML standard being used in the content. Okay, cool. Alright. Flash block. Alright. Okay.